Well, welcome back to the trade desk, the penultimate day of the trade period for 2020, and there's been some big deals done today. Adam Saad, the biggest of them all, Essendon and Carlton finally coming to an agreement, Sam, and it does involve pick 8.
Oh, thank goodness for that, Ayrton. I was getting sick of that phone not ringing. But yes, pick 8 essentially. Essendon keep their future second-round pick, which is what Carlton wanted as part of that trade, which I think will prove valuable for Jai Caldwell. Although when you talk to the Giants, they say, well, that won't be part of the trade because we're not accepting it. So there's still a little bit of posturing left to go, even though you mentioned it is the penultimate day. But finally, it seems like a marathon. It's over a month, by the way, since Adam Saad actually committed
36 days
to the Carlton Footy Club. There you go. So it's a long time to wait for a deal to get done.
Kane, do you think it's a fair deal for both clubs now that we've got it out of the way?
Yeah, I do. I find it a bit comical that it's taken this long. I mean, surely this was around about the mark that they would have set out to achieve, as Sam said a month ago. So the fact that it's taken so long and been held up by the fact of some late swaps in the picks probably highlights how ridiculous the trade period can become, and both teams wanting to make sure they get the final word and looking like they've won the deal. In essence, I think both have won. I think Essendon have turned in a second-round pick essentially to a top 10 pick, and Carlton get a player that they've had their eye on and will add and instantly replace the gun that was Cade Simpson. So for me, it's a winner for both teams.
Kane, just on that, use the words comical and ridiculous. I couldn't agree more. Surely, if this trade period has taught us anything, as much as we love it, Ayrton, and as much as the viewers and the listeners on radio and newspaper readers love it, we've learnt this trade period goes far too long.
Well, yeah, and you're right. And it happened again today with the Giants and Geelong meeting. Now, the fact that Geelong haven't put pick 13 in front of the Giants for Jeremy Cameron, who's the best forward in the game, is once again, I'll use the word again, comical. So as it sits right now, Geelong have got picks 15 and 20 on offer for Jeremy Cameron, who's the game's best forward, when they hold pick 13. So if I'm the Giants, I'm like, what are you doing? This is a trade situation, and you're not even going to put your first pick up for grabs at the moment. Now, this is a deal that we'll look back on tomorrow night, that will get done, but it's just been an absolute waste of two teams trying to haggle for something that eventually will happen.
So the Cats have been active. 13, 15, 20, you mentioned, are their picks. Is it 13 and 15? Is that enough for GWS? Or, I mean, I know there'd been talk of even 3 first-round draft picks as potentially being their asking price, Kane. That feels like maybe a bit of overs to me. How do you feel about what it will end up as?
Well, it's probably not overs if you look at what Tim Kelly went for, and that's what the Giants have been using as their precedent the whole time. Geelong will say, well, look, Jeremy Cameron's 28 years of age. The Giants will counter that by saying, well, yeah, he might be, but you're giving him 6 years at nearly $1 million, so you must think he's got that good footy left in him. So I understand the Giants, their position right now is we want 13, 15 and something else, be that a player or pick 20. And the Giants clearly still want to go to the draft because of how old their list is. So, look, I think when it comes down to it, he's out of contract. The Giants can't afford to lose him for nothing. So 13 and 15 probably get it done, at some stage tomorrow.
The Cats also today involved in a trade with Carlton for Lockie Fogarty. So they got pick 30 for that amongst some other draft picks. So that pick has already been used, Sam, for Shaun Higgins.
Yeah, Shaun Higgins, Kane, goes after a premiership at his third club. We know the levels of talent of this man. He had a lot of injuries at the Western Bulldogs. They seemed to fix them when he went down to Arden Street, when they had a really good record of keeping players fit. And clearly there's been a lot going on at that footy club, and now he goes to Geelong. And what an acquisition he is. A senior body, knows where the goals are, can go in through the middle. A match winner, a Brownlow vote getter, and they just keep getting these players through the door, Kano.
I agree with you, and not giving up a lot to get them. So Isaac Smith, you get for nothing the quality of him, and also Shaun Higgins, whilst they don't add to the age demographic of the squad and make it a little bit worse. Right now, Geelong are a better team than they were when they lost the grand final, and they were leading by, 15 points at half-time, and they're set to welcome in Jeremy Cameron. So to me, they start the season as premiership favourites, and I just wonder the fallout for North Melbourne. I know they're highly interested in Jaden Stevenson and are trying to get that done, but how do they fill the team next year, North Melbourne? So 11 delistings, Ben Brown's going to go to Melbourne, and now Shaun Higgins is off. There's 13. So they're going to have to raid the listed free agency pool to try and get a team on the park for round 1 next year.
Well, let's get to Jaden Stevenson and some potential positivity for North Melbourne, Kane. You said on this show only a few days ago, and I'm using your words, he was a generational talent. I think a lot of people's ears pricked up when you said that. He's 21. His first 2 years were really good. He's had a difficult year with COVID, with glandular fever, with a lack of form, and he met with North Melbourne's hierarchy, obviously Ayrton without a coach, this time last night, and clearly weighing up a move to Arden Street or stay at Collingwood. If he decides to go, the fascinating thing is going to be, what's his worth?
Exactly right, and what Collingwood are willing to accept. So if you can get Jaden Stevenson in the door for a second-round pick, his age is perfect for North Melbourne, and he's a player that North fans will want to go and watch. Let's be brutally honest. They're not going to have a lot to cheer for next year, North Melbourne. I mean, Ayrton Cornes is a very nice acquisition, but he's not someone who's going to put bums on seats, is he? Ben Brown and Shaun Higgins leave, two of your more classy and skillful players. They need something, some positivity, North Melbourne. So I completely and fully understand them going for Jaden Stevenson. But conversely for Stevenson, unless North Melbourne are chucking a 6-7 year contract offer at him for more money than he's on at Collingwood, why would you go there? How could you advise Jaden Stevenson as his manager to join North Melbourne, as you said, without a coach, when you're already locked in at Collingwood, the biggest club with Richmond in Victoria, and you're going to play in front of 80,000 at the G every week when COVID finishes, and you're there until the end of 2023. Why would you go, would be my question. So it would have to be something extraordinary.
I think Kane raises a really interesting point. But I guess the counter to that is, and Kane, I agree with you as to everything you said about North Melbourne. Things change really quickly, and I'm not saying they're going to change really quickly at Arden Street, but he's got 3 years left, clearly at a club where he doesn't feel welcome, and he only just, I think, 12 months ago signed a really good deal on nearly $600,000 a year. Now, if North Melbourne can extend that out to 5, and maybe they pay him similar money for those 5 years, and he can really see the build of young players coming through, I think he's probably got to go there, Kane. I agree with everything that you're saying, but if he's being shipped out of Collingwood, for want of a better term, I think extending his career at a young team that are building, and things can change quickly, we've seen that, I think he probably has to go, doesn't he?
Well, they can change quickly, but I just think it's going to be a really difficult year for him. Like playing as the biggest threat in that forward line as a small forward when the ball's not coming in. There's going to be some lonely games for the North Melbourne forwards next year. And Jaden Stevenson, he does rely on having good players around him. As much as I think he's extremely talented and has a massive future, he does need the help of some good players around him. That's why I think if you chucked him into a good side, be it the Richmond Footy Club, he'd be even scarier. But yeah, I just couldn't advise Jaden Stevenson, if I was someone that he trusted, that you'd sign with North Melbourne with where they're at right now.
Just before we move on to Adam Treloar, on Stevenson, Collingwood wants North Melbourne's second selection, we believe. So pick 11 potentially.
So they've got 2 and 11 who they got from Melbourne this time last year when they had that pick swap, and then their second round pick's 28.
So I'll ask you both briefly, if you're North Melbourne, do you do that deal, pick 11?
No.
It's Kane?
Yeah, I'd do it. I think you're going to get a better player. You're going to get Jaden Stevenson. You know what you're going to get is a proven player in big games, as opposed to a lottery pick at pick 11. Whilst it's a great pick, I mean, there's a lot of teams that have missed at pick 11, particularly this year when the recruiters haven't seen much footy. So if Collingwood pay some of that wage and pick 11 is there, that's a deal that I'd do. It
is a fascinating one, Ayrton, because if he goes there, you think back to that draft, Kano, they'll have 3 of the top 11 picks at 3 different parts of the ground. Aiden Bonner looks like he's going to play across half-back. He was pick 11 for GWS in that draft. Luke Davies-Uniacke was the other one who was a top 5 pick as well, who's obviously going to play in the middle, and Stevenson potentially as a forward. So, you're talking about rebuilding. One of the ways to fast-track a rebuild is try to trade in young talent who've still got the best part of a decade left of their career. Jaden Stevenson certainly is that.
Well, moving on now to Adam Treloar, and this is another interesting one, I guess, from trade value, so closely linked potentially too to Josh Dunkley. We know the Bombers have got picks 6, 7 and 8 now for Dunkley.
Where is this?
Well, this was earlier today, Sam, a suburban ground. I might keep it under wraps for the moment, but we caught up...
An undisclosed location?
Yes.
Clandestine meeting?
We caught up with Adam Treloar earlier today. You can see him hard at work, putting in these sessions, I guess, to keep himself fit.
He's not exactly trying to hide himself with the top off.
Yeah, he's certainly got a bit happening there, but... I guess the question for Treloar now is he's met with the Dogs. You reported yesterday he's had a medical. All of that's happened now. Can that happen aside from Josh Dunkley? I mean, how closely are these linked? It feels like Dunkley, to me, feels like the deal out of all of them that might fall over, just because he's got 2 years left on his contract. Essendon have got an offer. They offered pick 8, which was refused, and the Western Bulldogs have got all the leverage. So that would mean that Treloar maybe. What happens with him now?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you about the Dunkley one. That seems to be the most likely of the Danaher last year, doesn't it? You know, the potential of not going ahead. Kane, the Western Bulldogs are adamant that these two deals are separate. That, you know, Dunkley doesn't have anything to do with Treloar. I don't quite buy that. I can understand why they would say that, and they'd also say that there's only a very slim chance that they would keep Dunkley and then get in Treloar. But the fact that they've met him, Kane, the fact that they've done the medical and they're being prudent with their due diligence would suggest to me that they're more than just interested. I guess the question that will trigger the Treloar deal, Kane, is what does Essendon have to give the Western Bulldogs for them to let go of Josh Dunkley?
Well, that is it. And what is the point where the Bombers walk away from that deal? I spoke about it with Matthew Lloyd this morning. I wouldn't be giving up much more than a top 10 pick for Josh walk-away There's got to be a walk-away point for the Bombers as well. I mean, they have an extraordinary hand at the draft right now. I mean, you could go and set up the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years with picks 6, 7 and 8 in the draft, not dissimilar to what Port Adelaide have done with Butters, Rosie and Dersmer, even though the picks weren't even that good. So there's got to be a walk-away point for the Bombers. I would think that's if they're asking anything more than a top 10 pick. But they're all intertwined, aren't they? I don't see how Dunkley and Treloar play at the Western Bulldogs next year. So I'm with you, Ed, and I think for Treloar to be a Western Bulldogs player next year, Josh Dunkley mustn't be. I love that from Treloar, though, that vision. That's a bit of PR genius there, to be spotted training in November in that sort of shape says to me you're hungry, says to me you want to make a statement, and it says, you know, a bit of pushback on the Collingwood Footy Club. I wonder how many other Collingwood players right now are out there training and working on their craft like he's doing now. So whoever has advised Adam Treloar to do that, maybe there was a leak to some of our Channel 9 cameras to say, oh, hang on, just come around and have a look at this because Adam Treloar's in good nick and he's already started his pre-season. I love that. I think it's extremely smart.
Well, we might as well go straight to the source. How did you find out that he was training down there?
Oh, look, it's a great question, Sam. I don't want to reveal my sources on that sort of thing, so we might just leave it at that. But we might even later tonight hear from Adam Treloar, see what he had to say about how he's holding up. I wouldn't say it's...
He's holding back his best stuff, Kane. I can't believe this.
I know.
He's
holding it back for prime time.
That's right, prime time.
Exactly. You boys are a bit second rate for me at the moment. But anyway, I think we might move on. That deal obviously tomorrow night potentially has, I guess, the chance to go all the way. How does tomorrow night work?
I think it goes to the last hour. So Dunkley and Treloar, personally. Just
for those who don't know, how does tomorrow night work? So there's no trades before 3 p.m. We're told. So we're going to see a whole lot of action between 3 and 7:30.
I think is trade deadline time. And the hard thing here, Kane and Ayrton, is that when it's usually at Marvel Stadium and you've got each club's based in rooms, now the power brokers usually turn up about 5 o'clock. 2.5 hours to go. Player managers, the big-time player managers I'm talking about, Craig Kelly, Tom Petroro, Paul Connors, Robbie D'Orazio. It'll be Tim Hazel with Adam Treloar this time. And they would usually be going room to room as the go-between, you know, because the clubs don't want to meet too many times. So the mediators become the player managers who are trying to get their player from Club A to Club B. It was Nigel Carmody last year with his client Joe Danaher. That one didn't quite work out. But it's all over Zoom at this time. It's all out of the arc. So it's a little bit awkward FaceTiming someone, Kane, 6 or 7 times. You can screen people's calls. It's got a whole other dimension to it.
It does. And the other one that I think will go right down to the wire is this Jeremy Cameron and Geelong one.
Yep.
I expect that to be a last-minute one. But it's fascinating. There's been a huge build-up to it, some deals done today, but you'd think there'll be a flurry of activity between 3 and 7:30 tomorrow night. We're looking forward to it.
Well, thanks again, Kane and Sam, for your time. We'll see you all again.
Can't believe you're not revealing your sources, saving your best stuff for prime time.
We'll see you a little bit later.
That's got me more flat than the phone not ringing.
6 o'clock tonight, 9 News. We'll see you there, boys.